And that is our duty, and we have an overwhelming duty to the islanders.
Richard Lewis, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Happy to.
The events of the weekend have dealt the biggest blow yet to Mrs Thatcher's three-year-old government. The unexpected storm blowing up from the South Atlantic has led people to ask the question, can the Prime Minister herself survive it all? John Cole asked her tonight whether Lord Carrington's resignation had put the government itself at risk.
No, I don't believe it does. It was with very, very great regret that I heard of Peter Carrington's decision. I spent a long time on both Saturday and Sunday trying to dissuade him, because I knew that, man of honour that he is, he would feel that if the policy pursued by his department had failed, he would feel that he ought to resign. I felt, and you can understand this, that we needed Peter Carrington. I've been with him on so many international negotiations. He's absolutely outstanding. But he put to me this point of honour and said that there had to be honour in politics, and he would feel it deeply if, indeed he just said, I really wasn't at liberty not to accept his resignation on those grounds. And I understand that view. And of course Humphrey Atkins and Richard Luce also felt the same way from the same department. So it was a blow, but in a way, it's never a blow for politics if you have someone doing what he deems to be the honourable thing.
Prime Minister, I must ask you, do you feel any personal responsibility for what went wrong in this crisis?
In the end, of course, the Prime Minister always does. When you see the Argentines invading the Falklanders, we all feel the same. We all feel they're British there, they owe their allegiance to the Crown. And that's why I feel so deeply and strongly that we have to regain the Falklands for British sovereignty. It is still British, it is still British, and the people still wish to be British and owe their allegiance to the Crown. How far? We are assembling, I think, the biggest fleet that's ever sailed in peacetime. Excellent fleet, excellent equipment, superb soldiers and sailors to show our quiet professional determination to retake the Falklands, because we still regard them as sovereign British territory, and the fact that someone else has invaded them does not alter that situation.
And if that fails, what are the political consequences?
I am not talking about failure with the kind of fleet and the kind of people we have assembled. I'm talking very quietly about succeeding in a very quiet, I hope, British way.
Now, John, what was your real personal impression of Mrs Thatcher tonight? I mean, was she as cool, calm and collected? Off camera, as she appeared to be there?
Well, Peter, the Prime Minister seemed almost exhilarated by the operation of what she sometimes calls Thatcher's Law, that the unexpected always happens. She's had a truly dreadful weekend. She just lost today one of the props of her government. Incidentally, she must be thanking her lucky stars tonight that she didn't lose another of the props, Willie Whitelaw, in that rather ersatz row over law and order a couple of weeks ago. But she went ahead, and one of her appointments I draw your attention to, that of John Biffen. Now, this isn't the safety bet appointment for a party and a government in deep trouble. John Biffen's a deeply imaginative man. I think he's ready for a new political challenge, but he's certainly got one. He's a very idiosyncratic man. He's his own man, and I think it shows some courage, even daring on the Prime Minister's part, to appoint him.
So she's confident, but has she a right to be confident? How many, for example, how many of those Tory backbenchers that you're so often talking about believe that she is just as culpable as Lord Carrington for what happened?
Oh, a lot of them are saying this. A lot of them are saying that both John not and she have access to the same information as the Foreign Office has, and that they bear a share of the responsibility. And indeed, she herself acknowledged some of that. But I think one must say that the tides in the Conservative Party at the moment, and indeed in the Labour Party, are going as fast as the tides off Cape Horn. There are a large body of loyalists whose instinct is to stay by the government, particularly when a naval force is going to sea. There are one group who think that the government has made such a mess of things that more heads will have to roll. And there are a third group, a Pacific group, who think that we can't get the Falklands back by force, and who look to negotiations to try to get the best deal we can for British citizens there. So there are all sorts of
But
strands.
now, John, what are all these various shifting tides leading to? I mean, are we drawing near a situation in which this government's life really could be in danger, when we could find a general election within weeks or months?
Well, now, one could be very wrong about this, Peter, but at this moment, I think we have to remember that a lot of Conservative MPs were already worried about their seats with the challenge both from Labour and from the Social Democrat Liberal Alliance. Are they really going to force the government into a general election in the middle of an international crisis where it would certainly be slaughtered? I would have thought not. I think the government will survive in the short term, but what the long-term prospects of the government in a general election, even a year or 2 years hence, or of the Prime Minister personally are, that's a little more hard to read.
Now, what do you think most of the Tory backbenchers believe is going to happen, really honestly believe is going to happen in the South Atlantic? Do they really believe that the government is going to win a military victory?
Well, of course they hope that the show of strength will enable the government to win a diplomatic victory. They hope that the Americans will help, that the Argentines will back down, that the government will show great skill, that some measure of compromise or face-saver for the Argentines will be offered. But like the rest of us, they're not very sure about that, and some of the more bellicose do expect to have a naval battle, a naval blockade, or even attacks on the beaches.
Which they think the Navy can win?
Which they do.
But now, what do you think the level of tolerance is going to be? How long do you think those Tory MPs, even the most bellicose of them, are going to put up with a situation where the win doesn't come quickly?
I think the comment I found the most convincing, Peter, was one Conservative member who made the comparison with Mrs. Thatcher's plight to that of President Carter during the hostages crisis. The sort of thought that her authority will be eroded week by week and month by month if nothing much happens, if there is a blockade, if it's not having much effect, if there's no sign, if everyone begins to believe that the Falklands are not going to be recovered. That's when the real danger to her own position and therefore to that of the government will come.
But John, I remember about a year ago we were talking about, a few months ago we were talking about the danger to Mrs. Thatcher's personal position because of her economic policy. Now, is this far more serious than that? Just how much more serious is it?
Well, just at the moment when she felt she was having some economic success, we have got this crisis. It is much more serious than anything that's gone before. I think much more permanently damaging.
John Cole, thank you very much. Now, the charge against the Foreign Office is a double charge. In the first place, the charge is that from Lord Carrington downwards, the men at the FO